everybody, and welcome to today's video. We do have a fun little game to talk about today. It's called Shadowverse Champions Battle. Now this is a collectible card game that is developed by Cygames. Cygames is one of the biggest developers in the mobile space, but this is a Nintendo Switch title and they've actually adapted the game so it is more console friendly than those kinds of mobile phone free-to-play titles. It is the full effort to make Shadowverse accessible on the Nintendo Switch. The full game comes out on August 10. You can test it for yourself right now thanks to a demo that is available. I am playing the full version of the game under early access and preview embargoes are lifted. That's how I can talk about it. But I'm not going to go too far into it with this video because I don't want to do spoilers or all that kind of stuff. Anyway, point being, I have never played Shadowverse before. I don't know that much about the game going into it because I'm not a big fan of mobile games at the best of time, as well as those that have microtransactions and all that built into them. I just hadn't had the opportunity to check out Shadowverse in the past. However, I am a very big fan of collectible card games. I have been playing Magic the Gathering since it's been around, basically. I was actually a very early adopter of that game, as in the physical cards. And there has been a couple of other CCGs that I've really gotten into in the years since. Most recently, I was a big fan of the Final Fantasy card game and bought a lot of cards in that. Unfortunately, I don't have anybody to play that against anymore, so I have kind of stopped buying them, but I do have a big collection of them. I am a big fan of CCGs, and there's been a couple that I've dabbled in with the video game space as well. I did play Hearthstone, of course, for a while, and there was also the Might and Magic card game that I quite enjoyed as well. This is a genre that I do enjoy, but for me, the biggest challenge I've always had with it is I don't like free-to-play games, and I don't like the way that microtransactions adjust how a game is made. So I haven't really found a CCG that I've really enjoyed for quite some time. I think the one exception would have to be the Yu-Gi-Oh titles, but I'm not a big fan of the mechanics of Yu-Gi-Oh. I do enjoy the way that those have generally been premium priced titles for console. I think the PlayStation 4 one I played quite a bit, simply because I wanted a CCG to play, and it was one of the few premium priced ones that was released. So with all of that as context, I was actually really looking forward to Shadowverse Champions Battle, simply because it was a chance to play a premium CCG on my Switch, and my early impressions are that I'm quite impressed with it. I think that this is a game that I will find a lot of value in, and I will play quite a lot in the months and perhaps even years ahead. So I think to explain the appeal that Shadowverse Champions Battle has had to me so far, I need to go back to the Game Boy Color of all consoles, and a game I got really hooked on back then. Most people who had GBCs would be aware of the game I'm referencing. Of course, I'm talking about Pokemon card game, or Pokemon trading card game that was released on the GBC. So back when Pokemon was quite new, we're talking about the Game Boy and the Game Boy Color, Nintendo was doing a lot. Well, Nintendo and Game Freak, of course, Game Freak being the developer, they were doing a lot to really promote Pokemon as a franchise. There was the anime, of course, and there was this trading card game, which was very popular, and that popularity has actually continued on, of course. There was some amazing surreal images recently of a new Pokemon trading card set that had shortages, and you had people, grown men no less, knocking one another over to try and get access to these cards, which was just surreal. But that just goes to show how popular and enduring this card game has been. But back then, when it was new, it was also quite popular, and Nintendo had the wisdom and foresight, I guess, to create a video game trading card game. This is before mobile games had the opportunity to turn the trading card game genre into free-to-play nonsense. This was a full premium game that you buy once. You'd pop the cartridge into your Game Boy Color and you'd have the full experience sitting there ready for you to play. And it did everything. You got to play against other players via the link cable if you wanted to. You could trade cards back and forth. But if you didn't have that, you still got a full single-player experience. There was a story. It basically followed along with the same narrative as Pokemon Red and Blue, where you had to travel around defeating 8 gym leaders. After doing so, you had the opportunity to take on the Elite Four for the title of the best Pokemon trade card player in the world, or whatever the title they gave it. I can't remember what it was, but there was a narrative in there. And as you played opponents, you would win new decks of cards, or packs of cards, sorry, which you would then use to build ever more complex decks. And while the game itself only had, I think it was about 200 cards in total, perhaps even less than that, maybe it was only 150, it didn't have that many cards in it. It was still enough to give you a full, comprehensive adventure with a sense of progression as you unlocked new cards, and there was enough strategy in the card building mechanics to make for an interesting trading card game experience. I played that Game Boy Color game a lot. I actually spent a lot of time playing that and replaying it. I ended up getting all the cards that I could. I had my brother play it as well, so we could trade cards back and forth, which you needed to do to get a couple of the really rare cards. And it was just, if anything, it was just as popular as Pokemon Blue, Red, Gold and Silver were in our household, because the strategy of that card game was quite compelling. In fact, we actually ended up probably playing the Game Boy Color one via link cable more than the actual card games, because we liked to collect the cards and keep them in good condition. So we relied on the video game to be our outlet to play Pokemon trading cards. I've been waiting a long time for another game to come along with that specific appeal to me. And I did mention the Yu-Gi-Oh titles beforehand. They have narratives, but again, I'm not a big fan of the mechanics of them. I wanted a game that appealed to me in terms of the mechanics, much like Pokemon Trading Card did, but also had that little bit of narrative about it. It didn't have to be a complex narrative, it didn't have to be this epic adventure or anything like that, but it needed that sense of progression, and it needed a bit of a world building, So I'd travel around from place to place, finding opponents to play, and collecting my cards by winning battles and stuff. I wanted that premium experience where I wasn't going to be asked to cough up money for packs of cards on a constant basis, but at the same time, I wanted it to have that progression that I was constantly earning cards. Shadowverse actually does all of that, and that's the thing that I found really compelling right from the outset. The narrative itself isn't anything spectacular so far. I mean, it's fairly standard kind of stuff. You go along to your new school because you've moved to the big city, and you find out that everybody is absolutely manic for this card game called Shadowverse, which you've never played before. They get you set up and off you go. And your first goal is to figure out where the clubhouse is for the Shadowverse players. To do that, you've got to play a bunch of different opponents and collect a whole bunch of cards to get started with, which gives you the basis that you can then go along and just kind of get deeper and deeper into the world of Shadowverse. So it's a very simple setup, but the graphics are quite pretty. It's nice to wander around the school, and it's presented in a very fun, very personable, very charming way, which immediately drew me into the world and gave me the sense that I was here playing a game that was going to be very much like that Pokemon trading card game, just modern. Now, with it being new, there is also, of course, a raft of improvements that have come with the time since that Pokemon trading card game was released many decades ago now. For one thing, there is an absolutely mammoth number of cards to collect. I've barely scratched the surface, of course, at this stage, but there are 10 different types of decks that you can build. So if you've played Magic the Gathering or whatever, you know that there's 5 kind of colours there. There's white, black, green, blue, and red. Well, this one, Shadowverse, has 10 different categories of cards. Cards don't transfer across from one to another with a kind of very few exceptions. And building decks is therefore a complex experience because there are 10 different types of decks that you can build. At the moment, I've only started to play around with really 2 of them, and so I've got a lot to go to understand just how deep these decks go and how many cards are available for them. But I am getting cards at a ridiculous rate as well. Every time I'm winning a battle, I'm getting multiple new cards. Every time I level up, I'm getting multiple new cards. I'm getting all this currency which I can use to buy more cards. The card collecting side of things is almost overwhelming at the start. And I will say this, if you're not familiar with collectible card games, that can come across as a little bit intense to start with. I have been playing these things since I was very young, of course, so I'm more than comfortable with the rate in which I'm getting cards and understanding that this is a learning process and that I don't need to necessarily get the strategy and the nuances of everything right away. I will by the time I have put 10, 15, 20 hours into the thing, but for now I'm just accumulating stuff and just kind of taking in one step at a time. For people who are more casual card game fans, then as I said, this might come across as a bit overwhelming, but other than that, the kinetic energy of which you get all these new cards and decks and stuff is certainly a step up from when I was scratching around to try and get a collection of 150 cards back on the Game Boy Color, and I'm enjoying that process. The other thing that is obvious, just from the video that you've probably been watching here, this game is gorgeous. The settings themselves are quite simple and anime style, but attractively so. But the cards themselves are beautifully drawn. I've enjoyed unlocking all these cards, if for no other reason, just to see the full range of artwork on display. The anime girls are cute, of course, but there's some really interesting looking dragons. There's the undead, of course, and they always look appropriately sinister, and there's just so many different other types of varieties. There's soldiers and humans and elves and magical creatures and all of the rest. I'm really enjoying looking at all the art and picking the decks that I want to try, at least at this early stage, based purely on that artwork. In terms of the gameplay itself, it's very fast. Every match I think I've played has been timed to 5 minutes. At least as far as my recordings go, that's about how long each match takes. And it does feel very fast. Every turn there's a lot happening, and the game itself is quite good at explaining how to play. You'll learn it within 5-10 minutes or the course of 2 matches. And once you've got that, then it's all the interface is all nicely laid out, so it shouldn't be too hard for you to play, even if you're not too familiar with collectible card games. It's certainly on the easier side in terms of the mechanics. I think that's a kind of holdover from the mobile thing, but at the same time it's not without nuance and complexity, and I can just tell that I'm going to have a lot of fun learning how to build all these decks and getting these really great kind of combinations going, and then taking it online. I haven't even thought about trying that yet. In fact, I don't even know if I've got the online combat option unlocked at this stage. I think that comes later on, but I'm certainly looking forward to testing my card game skills against other players. The only other question mark I have at this stage is whether there is going to be microtransactions built in later on, whether the game starts to ask you to throw up real money, because once again, this is based on a mobile game. The mobile game is of course microtransaction supported. This one, even if there are microtransactions, there's certainly get enough cards to feel like you've got plenty to play with. But I am hoping that all of that stuff stays out there. I would much rather this game just be a pure, complete kind of premium experience without asking you to invest additional money, because I think that'll let down its appeal on me a little bit if I start to feel like it's asking me to invest in it. But anyway, that's enough for this preview. I hope you've enjoyed having a look at this game in action. If you haven't played it yet, definitely put it on your radar. I think this is going to be a game that people get very hooked on. And hopefully the online stuff and the multiplayer and all of that is nice and robust. Because if so, this could be a game that is my go-to for quite some time to come. Do let me know your own thoughts on Shadowverse if you've played it before. If you played the demo, let's have a chat about what you think about it so far. And other than that, stay tuned. I will have a full review of the game up on digitallydownloaded.net once embargo lifts, which is again about August 10, I think, so about a month from now. And until then, if you do have any other questions as I play along, feel free to ask, and I will do my best to answer them. Now, at the end of video stuff. If you do enjoy my videos, please do click that like and subscribe button. That way you won't miss any. You can also click a little bell there. That bell will make sure that you get notifications every time I put a new video up, so you can make sure you don't miss anything. I think you also get notified when I've got a stream going live, so if you've ever wanted to jump on and chat with me as I've played a game, then you can make sure that you're around for that when you click the bell. If you do enjoy my work, please do also back me on Patreon. You can do so for $1 a month or more if you're feeling generous. And that Patreon backing not only supports everything I do on digitallydownloaded.net as well as this YouTube channel, but you also get access to a monthly digital magazine, which is 48 pages long and is really about games, culture, art, entertainment, everything from Japan, travel as well. It's kind of everything I love about Japan that I kind of write essays about within that magazine. So it's a broader kind of magazine, and it comes out quite nicely. I've had good feedback from the people who have read it so far, so feel free to back me on Patreon to secure your copy there. Other than that, thanks as always for tuning in, and we will see you at the next video.